Hey, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting our students to learn what we teach. And I am Rob Alvarez. I'm the founder of Professor Game and professor of gamification and games-based solutions at IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and many other places around the world. And if this content is for you, then please go ahead and subscribe to our email list for free at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey, engagers, and welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have Victoria with us today. But Victoria, are you prepared to engage?
Yes, I am. I'm prepared to play.
Let's do this. Let's go, because we have today with us Victoria, and here I am going to certainly fail on this pronunciation. Ichizli-Bartels. Does that make any sense?
Yes, just a little amendment. It's Ichizli-Bartels.
Ichizli-Bartels, okay.
Yes.
She's a writer, coach, and consultant with a background in semiconductor physics, electronics engineering with a Ph.D, information technology, and business development. And while being a non-gamer in what we would call the traditional sense, she came up with the term self-gamification, a gameful and playful self-help approach, bringing anthropology, kaizen, and gamification-based methods together to increase the quality of life. She approaches all areas of life this way. Due to the fun that she had while turning everything in her life into games, she intends never to stop designing and playing them. Inspired by a tip from friends, she now likes to call herself a life gamer. And she is the author of more than 20 books, 11 of which are turning life into fun games and living gamefully. She's also an instructor, the instructor of 2 online courses on the topic. She was born and grew up in Moldova, lived in Germany for 12 years, and since 2008, she's been in Aalborg, Denmark, with her husband and 2 children. So, Victoria, are we missing anything from that intro that we should know?
No, it's great in a nutshell. Thanks.
Amazing. So, Victoria, what does a regular day or week with you look like? We want to know what it feels like to be you.
Well, actually, my day starts the previous day when I go to sleep and actually look at my watch and see if I'm actually losing one of my gemstones in a game, or losing or winning in a game I call Super Sleeper. So it's a game I play to get enough sleep. So already the previous day I see if I will be, for example, winning a tourmaline, which means that I have to enter our bedroom before 10 p.m. So if the biggest tolerance that I allow myself, it's 10 p.m. and 2 minutes. If I don't manage it, then the tourmaline is gone. So, and there are 5 different gemstones that I win in my Super Sleeper game, and there are coins and different. So there are all kind of things. And when I wake up, start preparing to for the day and helping my children. And if something doesn't work, then kind of some immediate ideas for some games, like, okay, will we manage in 10 minutes? Will we win against time, to get done this or this done? So there are a lot of creativity there. And when the children are at school, I'm self-employed, so I come home after I walk. This is actually also something that's called a walk outside game, where I think it's wood topaz, where I win a gemstone called wood topaz. And so if I manage to be 20 minutes or to have a walk over 20 minutes or more than 30 minutes in pieces, so I gain also some gemstones or points and so on. And when I come home, I actually record my points from yesterday, and then for today, make the plan. I do it on paper in a weekly calendar. So when I kind of set out some of the games, because in some games I play during the day, I don't record any points. They can be brief and short, but some of those, like fitness or so-called ambition project games, so it's usually writing a book or consultancy project game where I do something for the customers and so on. So, and there is specific, system of points. So my day is a collection of various games that I invent for myself.
It sounds like a lot of fun for you. I'm hoping you are enjoying that very, very much as you created them for yourself. Is that right?
Yes. So this is basically what self-gamification is, which you mentioned in the introduction. It's turning life or approaching life gamefully. And it is also a game in itself, or a collection of games. And it has both, phases or levels, or you could say also a gameplay loop, where every step is actually based on anthropology, kaizen, and gamification. So being aware, progressing in small steps or small bits in everything, and that being gameful and playful. The thing is that I constantly develop them further, those games. And I observe myself, how am I doing? And if I procrastinate, then I don't engage in something, then it means that I need, maybe as a designer, to adjust something so that I am, as a player, can be eager to engage again. So it's a constant observation of myself, engagement, seeing if I'm in the flow and so on. So it is utter fun, but it's also sometimes frustrating if I take something too serious.
Being too serious becomes frustrating then.
Yes, when I take something too seriously and too dramatically, for example, thinking that a project or something will affect my life so tragically or dramatically that something will change, that I will not be able to do something. So the fear, and this is something I learned through researching on kaizen, is that the more we want something, the bigger the fear. So actually, if we concentrate only on the final goal, then we actually might be stopping to do something or pursuing something because the fear becomes too big and we are just run away. It's like, fight or flight mechanism. But if we break something down into smallest bits so we are not afraid, it becomes really fun. So if I'm not too serious but concentrating on the smallest bits and approach it gamefully, then it's actually becomes effortless, and both effortless and fun.
So actually you touched upon something that we always, as you know, like to discuss on the podcast, which has to do with failure or first attempt in learning, right? So we would like to know of one of those times that you mentioned before where things, we were trying to do something, whether on self-gamification or something for a client, and things did not go the way that you were expecting them. Things went south. How was that experience? What did you learn from that? What did you do differently now, perhaps? What are the lessons you took away? We want to be there with you and learn those lessons.
Yes, the biggest failure, or I would say it's more like a process. So gamification is a process, is what I learned. And actually, so the biggest failure in this process is when I stop having fun or stop following what I called my fun detecting antenna. So if I start taking something too seriously or thinking how would other people think about it and stop actually enjoying the process and concentrating on fun, then actually the whole thing can go south. So it's actually goes wrong direction. And some of my favorite authors, Ariel and Shia Kane, they actually said they are the authors on many books on what I call self-anthropology. So observing ourselves as anthropologists would do, and on living in the moment and being in the moment. And they say that they observed when they are not having fun, they are moving in the wrong direction. And I heard this by many people, like famous people like Heidi Klum and others. They always recommend having fun. And I know that fun is not tangible when considering, for other people, it's very difficult. But when we have fun, we know we don't have to smile. We can frown. We can even swear, use curse words like in games. But we know that we have fun. We are engaged and we are fully engaged. So not only engaging because other people do. And I've seen and observed gamers, for example, engage not because they had fun, but because they felt obliged for the community of online gamers that they work with, play with. And there are maybe some glimpses of fun that come once in a while, but sometimes it's, even escaping into something, it doesn't mean to have fun. But when we experience fun, we know it. And I think it's compass. So fun is really a compass. And if I stop observing it or seeing it, and also seeing the people I interact with, if I'm kind of buried in my fears or thoughts and not see around what's happening, then I lose, I don't follow my fun detecting antenna anymore. And then the failure is actually mostly programmed because I disengage. The people I work with also disengage through that. And then the failure is there.
But I'm sorry to sort of insist on this, but can you remember a specific time when this actually happened? One story where you were trying to do this and it didn't work out, as you were saying.
Well, it will be a story where it both worked and didn't work. So besides working on self-gamification, I'm also consulting on a technical standard, which is called S1000D. It's about technical publications, and it's used both in defense and civil industry. And as a consultant, you bring some bias. I consulted many projects over the years since 2004. Actually, I worked also with German defense and represented them in the S1000D community. So there were things when taking too seriously. I remember like arguing at the groups and so on in the working groups and saying, it has to be changed. We worked and others until midnight, producing ideas and really even almost going, to tears and discussing and fighting, arguing about that. And that was really a failure sometimes because we were, taking things too personally, too seriously. But then something happened many years after those really personal, taking things too seriously, too personally. Then I started turning my life into fun games, and I went to a customer to consult them on their implementation. And the project manager asked me to analyze a document from their client to see how, with their requirements, and to see how we can implement then this standard further for them. And he left me. I was in his room and I was reading the documents and I started complaining. I was reading, and there were many inconsistencies, some mistakes. I was thinking, how could they do that? And I started again complaining. But then at that time, I was already turning my life into games. So I said, wait a second, stop there. What's happening? Then I realized I wanted to get done with it immediately, but I couldn't. It was a huge document to read and analyze. So I said, okay, I will turn it into a game. And I said, I will give myself a point for each paragraph that I read and analyze. And I took a scrap of paper and started, recording the points, so like the tally. And something interesting happened. When there were 5, I started like, there are 5. And and more, I stopped complaining. Instead, I was like eager to see how many points. It's already a page and so on. And then something else happened. I realized when I concentrate on each of that small bit, I saw that the inconsistencies were not because they were not professional, those people who created the document, but because these inconsistencies were coming from the standard, from that version of the standard that they had to implement. And I had to admit that I was one of the authors of the standard. So there was like, whoops. So what I did, I started another document and saying, okay, this problem comes from that inconsistency. This is how you can solve it. So when the project manager came, I had almost finished analyzing the document, and I showed him an additional document that I created, and I explained him what happened. And we formulated an email to their client together about that, so they could correct their document and we could create the one that is consistent with the standard. And then he saw this tally, this scrap of paper with points, and he said, what is that? I said, I was a bit confused at the beginning and I was a bit, too stressed, but then I turned it into a game. And he laughed about it. And then later we had a project meeting with more people there, and they have been frustrated, especially the quality assurance department that already had their processes, how to implement quality, how to assure quality for their documents and their products. But this new standard brought new mechanisms, so they were frustrated about that. But then when the project manager told them, okay, she turns this into a game, they started laughing too. And we all the whole atmosphere relaxed. Everyone stopped complaining, but they saw my enthusiasm, both about turning into a game, but also about the standard. And the whole thing changed. And what happened at the end was that the whole, we actually finished the work quicker than we thought. So I saved them money because that was like hourly, consultancy hourly pricing. So that made them very happy. We have produced additional document which was not planned, and their client was so happy that what happened, they asked them, who consulted you on the standard? So they, and I was working together with at that time as a subcontractor for a company. So what happened, their client actually referred us to their other subcontractors to, so we could consult them too on this implementation. So out of this exercise, what happened, we got 4 more referrals and 2 more customers out of that. So, and the interesting thing, there was no additional technology, no additional personnel. The only thing changed is my attitude, is the attitude of a consultant. And that's it. It's not me as a person particularly, but in general, just change of the attitude from complaining. And this is what consultants, actually many consultants do. They bring their personal bias into, when they consult someone, say, don't do that, it's wrong. But I stopped doing that. I said, wait a second, let's see it non-judgmentally. This is when you truly are aware. Then progress with small bits, really one step at a time. Just forget everything and just concentrate on that. And be gameful and playful. And that's amazing thing. And what also was amazing is that I didn't try to convert them into, gameful, or their process into gameful at all. It was not the goal in the project. Project was something completely else. But I turned my life, my task, into games. And they started to be gameful and playful as well. I came once to a meeting and they said, we are playing darts. I said, what? And they draw, and they had to make a decision what kind of software solution they would use to implement the standard. But they already made, we had a market search and everything. They already made a decision. But on the blackboard, they draw on a dart, with more space for the solution that they've chosen. And we were throwing the pens onto this dart to, and then the solution was chosen. But, and I didn't tell them that. I didn't even ask them be gameful, but they got infected by it. And that was a huge, inspiration for me, and also seeing the failure, because in the same project was both, I complained at the beginning, but then I turned it. And I think this is what we need also to do when we talk about failures, not looking only at the failures, but see what's happening when we change something, how we win, because this is what the best game designers also do, that they actually create many solutions. They might not work, but then you take an element from one, maybe an element from another, a mechanism for the third, and then there becomes an amazing game. So this is what we really need to see. In games, we quite rarely consider failures as failures. We bump in a racing game, car racing game, we bump into a wall, but we don't sit there like in real life, we see how can I do that? Instead, we see what's happening. Okay, time is going, it's the wrong way. I have to rear back, and go. So this is what we should also try to do in real life as well. Failure, it's just, bump with the car. What could we do, to continue or to win the game? It's just a stepping stone. Yeah.
Right. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And that, I think there is the success in that story for sure. Is there, you mentioned many things, but is there something that you would say you would sort of attribute part of or significant part of the success to in that case? Like something that you would like to say, I know I did this, and that's one of the things that really worked.
Being kind to myself. This is the starting point. Being really aware what's happening and considering my thought processes. Because basically, my laboratory, and whenever we work with other people, it's really to consider we have a huge access, in our brains to a human laboratory. We can try things on ourselves, and this is what also game designers do. They by creating games, they actually already test their ideas on themselves, and that's really important. And starting to being kind to myself and also trying things. And self-gamification is about helping ourselves and turning our own lives into games. So this is my focus point. But what I also realized, and I started researching self-help, academic papers and so on, and I realized that self-help often still concentrates on the literature on, social interaction. And it's, of course, important. They are talking about self-help groups and so on. But the thing is, we will never reach out for help to other person if we will not help ourselves to reach out to them. We need to kind of take courage and do that. So this step on taking courage until we reach out to others, This is my focus point. So I'm trying to concentrate to see how can I do that? When is it the point? What can I do myself? Or when is it the point to ask someone for help? And how I can do that, how I can support myself, in doing that.
Sounds amazing. So, Victoria, from the experience you've had from doing self-gamification for all this time that you have, what would you say is, again, if you're facing a new situation, and you want to use the strategies that you've been testing, do you have some form of a process, a series of steps? How would you approach it, essentially?
The approach is actually the game itself. So these steps or these components that I mentioned, like awareness, breaking down to small steps, and being gameful and playful, this is actually the process. You could also see it as a gameplay loop. So it works both on small levels and big levels. And this has to do with the fact that both games and life are fractal. And you probably heard of the term fractal, right?
Yeah, I have, but definitely, how it applies in this case is something, gives a review so that not just me, but the audience also can get a grasp at what you're meaning.
Absolutely. Fractals is, actually, they have a characteristic that the small pattern has the similar, a similar structure as the bigger pattern. So it builds up, the bigger pattern, and they have the same structure or the same shape, you could say. And there are very famous examples in nature, like leaves. If you see in the structure of the all small branches in the leaves, they look like the whole tree. And we think of games. You have a small step in a game, like I heard like in the earlier Super Mario game, where it had like 3 steps: jump, run, and go, or something like that. So you need always for one step you need to do that. So the same is with if you look at that a small gameplay loop, it's a game in itself. It has a goal, it has some rules, it has feedback. Then the same is for levels, for big levels of the game, or for the game in itself. So they have the same structure. And I like following the definition by Jane McGonigal, who says that every game, if stripped off of all other elements, and just the 4 core components are goals, rules, feedback system, and voluntary participation. And it's absolutely the same in life. So everything in life has exactly the same structure. Even, physical step that you take. It was funny for me to just analyze it. For example, if you take somewhere a step and you want to go somewhere, for example, I'm sitting in my small office at home. If I want to go into the kitchen, I have to stand up and take the step. So the goal would be to go toward the kitchen. The rules would be not to crawl, but to go on my 2 feet. And the feedback system, if I actually done it, if I went into this direction. So this is the interesting thing. And again, the process of that, I was quite astounded, actually. When I talk about self-gamification, it's not that I like saying that it's not that I invented it. I didn't invent it. I discovered it. I just realized that in everything, you have this, and everything that works and successful, especially in terms of self-development. And if you look at those amazing works like Atomic Habits by James Clear, if you look at Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin, and so many other amazing books and approaches and methods, if you look at the core of them, you have this process. Awareness, the smallest part of what you can process immediately with what you have at hand. And then actually gamefulness and playfulness. Even the habits, if you take a habit tracker, you have the point system there. You put a check mark that you did something today, So this is everywhere. Another example is this famous approach by Mel Robbins, I think. The book is called 5-Second Rule. And the thing is that she was procrastinating, to stand up in the morning, to wake up and do what she had to do. She was pressing the snooze button all the time and procrastinating. So once she watched a commercial where a space rocket was starting. So there was this countdown, 5 to 1, go. So she started doing that for herself. And every time, the alarm clock was ringing, went off, she was doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And so she was starting her day. And this helped her, and she started researching on all psychological, aspects of that and how that worked. And she published a book, and it was very, very successful, and many people followed this approach. But if you look at it, it's a game too. So the goal is, to win over your snooze button. So, and the rule is that you stand up, after this countdown. If you don't manage, then the snooze button has won. If you manage, that you have won. and that is the amazing thing. So the process is really be aware, progress in small steps, and have fun. And the part of having fun, the gamefulness and playfulness, it is actually seeing these parallels with games, seeing what games actually teach us. And the interesting thing, the games came actually from us. We created them, right? At least the games we as humans do, we created them. So we took them from life. And when you see many video games, they have this. My daughter used to play this repair game when she was repairing on her tablet. She was repairing some iron, or some other things, some appliances at home. And it was really interesting. And I was asking her, do you like it? I said, I don't like this level, but I want to manage it because I want to go to the higher one. It was really interesting, this whole aspect of games, what they can teach us, how we can persevere and so on. So, and the nature of those games, the type of games. For example, I realized that self-help and self-care is actually a so-called single-player massive game, like the game of Spore. Maybe you have heard of it. Spore is a game. Jane McGonigal actually shared about this game in her book, Reality is Broken. And it's really interesting. It's not a massively multiplayer online game like many popular games, but it's a single player, massively online game, meaning that you do everything yourself. You create a universe out of a one cell organism, but you have access to everything other people do in the game. It's so-called Sporopedia is there. So you can take the mechanism, take the things that they created and use for your universe. This is what we have in life as well. We live, everyone, of course, we play some multiplayer game with each other, but the way how we construct our days, how we do them, especially when we are adults and now get a job and we have a to-do list, or we, plan what we do that or particular day. So we are designers there. So we create our own universe, but we have access to what the others do, especially now in the interconnected world, online, you can find almost anything. So that's the interesting thing, just to see and to get inspired by what's happening there, and also to get encouraged by that. One thing that also I've found out is that some gamers might not like single player games. So thinking, okay, that's not so good that my life is just a single player game. I have to do it all by my own. But the interesting thing, I learned about World of Warcraft, that there was a study of several thousand players, and they discovered that 70% of time in this massively multiplayer game, people just do what they want on their own and don't interact with others. That was a huge aha moment for me. So we are afraid, to be alone. And of course, there is a lot of emphasis on, we are social beings and we're together and we are afraid what we can do alone. But actually, we have this, we want to do many things alone, but it's good to know that somebody is there, and they also, especially World of Warcraft, it's interesting. They have to pay a monthly basis to play the game, but they still do that, although they do 70% of the time just what they want. But they have this feeling, there is someone, I can start, a campaign, I can do something with others. And the same, we need to be aware that is happening in life as well. And this phenomenon, one of the names of this phenomenon is called playing alone together. And for me, it was a huge aha moment because my sister, I have one sister, and she is 8 years older than me. So the interests are very, very different. But we used as children, to do each of our own things, but together. We were in the same room doing different things. And the same I see with my family, my husband and our two children. They are gamers, true gamers, so in traditional sense. So they sometimes play together, but also sometimes play, separate games. But they sit together and just, sometimes comment on something. Oh, I just did this, I just did that. Can I show you something? So that's what we need to realize, that We might be doing things ourselves or be responsible for some things ourselves and many things, but we still have this, we do something, maybe some of the things we do alone, but do them together with others. So we are not alone.
Sure, makes sense.
Yes.
Just a quick break before we continue with this episode. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I would really appreciate if you share it with your friends and family and on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @RobAlvarezB and the hashtag ProfessorGame, all one word. And in Facebook, you can find the Professor Game page. Thanks in advance for your engagement.
So Victoria, we've been talking about many of the things within your process. Is there any quick recommendation, anything that you would say, look, do this is a best practice, and whatever your project you're working on in gamification, game-based solutions, this is actually at least going to make your project a little bit better?
Absolutely. And that's, again, awareness and without being judged. So this is the biggest superpower you can have, to be non-judgmentally aware, and to be also aware that we are very paradoxical and very judgmental beings. Even when we listen to someone, we either nod or shake our heads because we compare to something we know already. So to actually being open-minded, like the very small children, they have this big eyes and open mouths and just absorb. And if we are able, and we are actually quite able of that in games, we are curious of games. When you bring a new game to someone and they can, okay, let's see what it is about. We are more open to be less judgmental of games than in real life projects. And even if at the beginning some project could come from our own initiative, at some point there is this tradition to judge it, to complain. But with games, it's not. So this is my huge recommendation, to be aware. And also the second recommendation is to always follow this fun detecting antenna, because this is the biggest compass, the best compass that you can use. Because if you don't have fun, then those who look at your product, they will not have fun either. And it's true to anything you do in life, be it technical project or be it a book, be it a game, be it anything else. If you're not having fun, you will not have passion. And
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Having fun is always something very important to have and to consider, especially if we are in this world of games and gamification.
Yes.
So Victoria, is there somebody that you would say you would like to hear answering these questions on Professor Game, sort of a future guest for us here on the podcast?
Yes. I don't know if you had him, so I'm not sure. I didn't hear to all of that. But I think Karl Kapp would be very, very interesting to hear about. He's a professor of games and game design in the US, and he did you have him already?
Yes, but it was a while ago, and to be honest, I know he's done many other interesting things. Again, we've sort of coincided a couple of times in conferences as well.
Great.
I'm pretty sure in one of them I did mention, we were discussing maybe we should reconnect, and
Yes.
to be honest, I haven't done it, so it could be a nice reminder for that. And
Absolutely.
as you mentioned, Karl is also an author. He has several books on the topic. Is there a book that you would recommend the engagers? Again, this audience full of people interested in games, gamification, and game-based solutions.
Well, that's interesting.
Of course, right next to your 11 books on the topic.
Thank you. No, it's there are many great books, and I'm reading now a lot. One of the books, actually, maybe it's not exactly, and this is something that I started reading it, but I didn't finish yet. But it will be a huge research object for me for one of my future projects. But I think as game designers, you really need to study emotions, and one of the most famous game designers, and also he's a Magic the Gathering champion, Justin Gary. He could be actually also a good candidate for your podcast. Maybe you heard of him, and he has Thinking Like a Game Designer, a very good book. Yes, so he says the first thing, you have to concentrate on emotions. And there is a great book which came out just recently by Brené Brown. It came out in the end of 2022. It's called Atlas of the Heart. So she concentrates on emotions and experiences and says, actually, when we define something, when we say something, label an emotion that we have, if we misinterpret it, we actually turn our true emotion into something else. So if we are, for example, confused or sad, but say we're angry, then we become angry. So it's very important to be able to understand what we feel and also label or understand them correctly. And she actually described the 87 emotions and experiences. And I think this is something what will help very much game designers to understand. And another actually is a tool. It's also about emotions. It's called Emotionsidaurus for writers. So I think something when you can recognize and understand emotions better, this I would really recommend to all game and gamification designers.
Well, that's plenty of recommendations. I know there was one with the Atlas. I was trying to type everything up and look for the links, but I will catch that when I listen to the recording. Thank you for all those recommendations, Victoria. And
please let me know and I will send the links, so no problem.
Amazing. So, Victoria, what would you say is, we talked about other people, but in your case, what is your superpower in this world of gamification?
I think really self-gamification. So I know it's not a simple question because there are three skills there, three superpowers: awareness, the small bits, kaizen, and gamefulness. But this is really what's since some time I started doing so-called gratitude game. It was inspired by what Oprah Winfrey is doing and writing 5 things I'm grateful every day. And I find myself writing quite often, and I actually count. I have a counter saying on how many days since I started playing it I do that. So there is a point system there as well. So I realized that many times I actually I'm grateful for discovering self-gamification, for this possibility to live my life gamefully. It saved me in many ways. I have also several health challenges and so on. So it helps me, keep a healthy lifestyle with all of that. And also as being a non-gamer, not being resentful toward gamers, but actually being inspired by them. So definitely living life gamefully, it's the hugest, the gift, the biggest gift. And also, I think it's my superpower right now.
Amazing. And Victoria, we've come to the difficult question now. What would you say is your favorite game?
That's it's
as a non-gamer, as you mentioned.
As a non-gamer, yes. We've been asked at Gamification Europe conference. There was a pre-event with Pete Bacon's. He said, so just answer quickly. And I said, I don't know if it's a game, but what I like is writing sprints. So writing in sprints, I put like 5 minutes, my timer on 5 minutes and write. Just simply write on any project I have. So that's one of my favorite games, you could say. But if it's games in traditional sense, one of my favorite games, it's called Go Nuts for Donuts. I think it's from Right Game or something. I forgot the company that produced it, but it's called Go Nuts for Donuts. It's a kind of strategic game, but also card game. It's very, very fun. And inspired by this, I actually, some of the badges in my games that I give myself are donuts, drawn donuts. So, yes.
So I'm guessing you do like donuts quite a bit.
I cannot eat them because I'm gluten intolerant and have other things. So actually is, and gluten-free, they have some other things. I'm intolerant to many things, so I cannot eat many things. So this is one of the things that I can do for myself is to draw colorful donuts for me. So, but I find a way, no problem.
That's too bad. And to be honest, there have been, significant advances. I did a gluten-free diet for a while, and then we discovered it was actually lactose what was actually affecting my health. So now I'm lactose intolerant. That's what I'm avoiding. But I did spend quite some time without gluten. And yes, it is not ideal, but you start finding more and more interesting stuff in the space lately, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
I did have gluten-free donuts. Now I found something which was perhaps more difficult to find, which is vegan donuts, because they don't have milk, which is what I'm intolerant to now. So I've also found that lately. So there's all sorts of things out there. And again, it's improving a lot more. I'm thankful I didn't find out about this 20 years ago, because not only I was not in Europe, but it was also, darker times for people with these kinds of intolerances, for sure. Sure. So Victoria, before we move on to the next thing, before we click continue, can you please let us know if you have any final words, any final piece of advice? where can we find out more about you, your work, your books? And of course, then we'll say it's game over.
So the quick advice is really enjoy whatever you're doing. So again, have fun and just don't worry too much and just be where you are. So have fun with what you have and what you have right now. And you will get inspired. Actually, when you are gameful, you're also resourceful. So that's my advice. How to connect with me? You can find me, of course, on LinkedIn, but also you can find me on my website, which is optimistwriter.com. Yes. So at anywhere, if you also type my name, it's relatively unique because of complicated last name. So you can find me. And but also on my website, there is a page called Contact with listing all the places you can find me, and on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and so on. So and also my email, so you can connect.
Amazing. So for sure, look on professorgame.com. You look for Victoria. I think you're the first Victoria that we interview. And even if not, you will only have maybe 2. And then you'll definitely find all the relevant links for all of this. All right?
Yes.
So Victoria, thanks again for investing this time in the Engagers and spreading the word about self-gamification, gamification in general, and all the fantastic things that you are doing. However, as you know, and as the Engagers certainly know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Victoria. And remember, if you have any questions that you would like to ask future guests, please go to professorgame.com/question and ask that question. Once it is selected, it will come up in a future episode, and you will get your answer live by one of our guests. And as always, before you go on to your next mission, please remember to subscribe or follow absolutely for free using your favorite podcast app to Professor Game Podcast and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.